welcome the CEO of Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport, Sean Donohue, in conversation with Skift founder and CEO, Rafat Ali.
All right. Hey, Sean, how are you?
Hey, Rafat. Good to see you, even though it's on another virtual call.
I know, but I was telling the anecdote in my opening that the way the Skift Aviation Forum came together is I ran into you at some conference and I said, hey, we're thinking of this. Are you interested? And literally, it was just a 5-minute conversation. And I think we were on a call pretty much 2 weeks after. And we obviously planned for a physical conference. So kudos to you on moving so quickly. And I know you and I talked about, even though you're owned by the city, you operate very much like a private, or at least a corporation that moves much faster than you would imagine. Typically, airport CEOs are not in the public limelight unless there's something bad happening in the news. But speaking of which, obviously the last 18 months, DFW has had sort of a very interesting position, and we're going to talk about it on your journey and what's happening now. But let's start with what is happening now, which is that the borders have reopened, at least to all vaccinated travelers from around the world.
Right.
I know the coastal hubs have seen an influx of people coming in. Are you seeing that at DFW?
We are. Clearly, the volumes on the international inbounds are up pretty strongly, Rafat, and the airlines are still adjusting their flight schedules, but the flights that are operating with much higher load factors. And the other part of it that we're hearing is the optimism about the spring and summer of 22. Mm-hmm. Especially for Europe and South America, is very, very high. And I was coming back last week from London, and I worked in the airline industry for 25 years, and so even though I run DFW, I continue to introduce myself to the flight crew and the flight attendants, and I was speaking with them, and it was great to just see how pleased they were to see the airplane full again, and that was great to see.
Yeah, and then Doug Parker, who was speaking right before you, was saying that he sees, at least for the U.S. Europe transatlantic, for the traffic to go back to close to 2019, if not more, by second half of next year, certainly starting summer. Is that your sense, just looking at the traffic and your numbers and looking forward?
It is. As a matter of fact, we believe next summer to Europe and to South America and even to the Middle East will be stronger than what we saw in 2019. Mm-hmm. The wild card is Asia. There's still uncertainty in terms of the recovery of Asia traffic, especially the China trips. But just in the last 2 months, we've seen Turkish come into DFW from Istanbul for the first time. Last week, Finnair and Iberia announced they're going to be coming into DFW.
Right.
British Airways announced they're going to bring the A380 into DFW. Qantas is coming back right after the new year. American's going to start Tel Aviv nonstop. So the airline optimism based upon the traffic is there. And that's why we believe next summer will be busier internationally, excluding Asia, than any summer we've seen.
And what do you obviously, this is obviously part of your work of trying to get these airlines to start these flights, but part of it is, and you and I talked a little bit last week, is some other factors, not just it's not like Dallas has suddenly become a hub of like global tourism. But what, from your sense of being in such a giant sort of region of Dallas and Fort Worth, what is your sense of what's driving it beyond just your work itself?
Right. I would say it's two drivers, Rafat. Number one, the DFW, the Dallas-Fort Worth metropolitan area, continues to be one of the fastest growing metropolitan areas economically, It's recovered faster from the pandemic than most metropolitan areas. Matter of fact, there have been more corporate relocation activity post the pandemic starting than there was prior to the pandemic. So companies keep wanting to move down here. People are moving down. The second point is a lot of the international increases are driven by Americans' enormous connectivity out of DFW. And, take British Airways. They would not be bringing an A380 into DFW if you didn't have the tremendous connectivity out of DFW. And then obviously BA has excellent connectivity out of Heathrow. So those are really the two main drivers in our opinion.
Mm-hmm. And talk about your relationship with Doug Parker as well as American, like obviously the most important relationship for you out of all of them. Everybody has rethought their relationships, I guess, over the last 20 months. Is that a relationship that you want to diversify, obviously keeping that still as the big one?
Doug and the entire American team, they are our biggest customer. And that's how we look at the airlines. We look at airlines as customers. And I mention this when I'm out in the region. DFW Airport wouldn't be what it is if it wasn't for Americans' commitment. And what's been beneficial to us in the region is even during the pandemic, American has continued to move more and more of their system share to DFW. And so we work with American on many, many fronts. They're a great partner. They're actually on the airport now with their new headquarter campus. And we will continue to work closely with them. What we're also seeing, though, Rafat, is other airlines are noticing the economic growth of the DFW region, and we're getting more and more interest for other airlines because they want to participate in the economic growth of the region. But Americans, over 80% of our business, they are our largest customer. And that's how we look at them. We look at them as a customer.
You were talking, speaking of customers, you were talking last week when we talked, is DFW, few people understand, is so much land that you were talking about Amazon has now a giant facility there, happens to be next to the airport, but not just for the airport. And so talk about sort of your thought of airport as a hub beyond just the airport facilities itself.
Right. We're fortunate that we have 17,000 acres at DFW. And what that allows us to do is diversify. And one of the businesses that we've had a lot of success on is commercial development, because we have all this land. We're right in the middle of the DFW Metroplex. Logistics wise, we're in a great spot. So you mentioned Amazon. They have over 5 million square feet of logistics and warehouse space on DFW Airport. Mm-hmm. And we have many other commercial partners at the airport. And then that, to your other point, feeds right into our cargo growth. And we're very focused on continuing to grow cargo. And really, when you look at cargo from an airport perspective, Rafat, at the bottom line, it doesn't drive a lot of revenue for an airport because it's primarily landing fees. Right. But it drives an incredible economic value for the region. And DFW is a $37 billion economic engine every year for the region. And we're the second largest in the state of Texas, and cargo plays a big part of that.
Speaking of economic engine, obviously the current moment, everybody, and this question is going to come up again and again through the day. Labor issues are everybody's trying to hire people. I'm guessing you're in the same boat. Talk about what the labor situation is and how do you see that easing up?
We are in the same boat, and our particular situation might be a little bit more acute. When the pandemic started back in March, April of of 2020, I made a commitment to all of our employees that I would not furlough anybody. We would not reduce comp and benefits. And I wanted to assure them during that crisis that they could count on their job and they could count on all their benefits. But we also knew that we weren't going to be as big. It was going to take a couple of years for a recovery. So we did a voluntary retirement incentive program, and we had about 10% of our workforce take that, which we felt was great because that was strictly voluntary. The employee got to choose rather than the airport mandating a furlough. And that's worked out well. Well, what it's also done, though, is we have to backfill, not all 200 people, but we have to backfill a good majority of them in an environment where it is tough to hire. We are making progress. The other area on the airport that has struggled with hiring is all of our concessionaires. And again, we've tried to help them. We effectively waived all their rental payments for close to a year. We as an airport walked away from, I believe, about $50 million in rental payments that will never recover. But we wanted to support our concessionaire partners, especially our local minority and women-owned businesses. And the great news is now, as we come out of the pandemic, we see about 90% of them are open. And that's a great outcome for their business, and it's a great outcome for the travelers through DFW.
Okay, let's move on to, so you said you just came back from London. You were at COP26,
Right.
the climate conference. Why were you there? I know Scott Kirby, who's going to speak later today, he was there as well, from United, probably the only airline CEO that were there. What are lessons you're bringing back? Obviously, you've been thinking about sustainability at DFW for a while. What's your sense of what are the lessons you're bringing back?
Well, it was great to be over at COP, and I was there the second week. So we went over to accept an award from the United Nations for our sustainability efforts. We've got a fantastic team working on all of our sustainability efforts. And what I saw, especially in week two, I would describe as the week that people rolled up their sleeves and started talking about what actions could be taken. And we had conversations around carbon capture. We had conversations, obviously, around sustainable aviation fuels. And it was energizing to get together in a forum where people were starting to move away. And I believe this is a very important point, especially to aviation. Mm-hmm. 2 or 3 or 4 years ago, when we were talking about sustainability and the 2050 commitments, what I was hearing a lot in aviation, Rafat, was, well, one of the ways we'll get there is carbon credits. And carbon credits do have a role, but they are not sustainable.
Right.
If you're making your sustainability goals by carbon credits, that is not a long-term solution. And what I'm happy to see is, especially in aviation, the pendulum has changed, and we're starting to see more action-oriented work going on. And it's going to take time. It's not going to happen overnight. But you're not going to make your goals, and we're not going to achieve what we have to achieve from a climate perspective if people keep focusing on carbon credits.
And at an airport, there's a lot you can do. I think it's probably good to be in a position to be an airport because there's so much you can do with the building, with the material, with how you move people through it. With you just did a trial for sustainable aviation fuel, which is a sort of I was reading about a circular circular loop. I guess was the phrase where you're using the used vegetable cooking oil from the concessions. Talk quickly about sort of what that experiment is and how do you see that going?
Sure. Well, first of all, what airports can do, and this isn't a race, it's not a competition. we want to share all of this, and we want to learn from other airports as well. First place we started was a couple years ago. 100% of the electricity, of the power we use at this airport, 100% we purchase through wind. The award we won at COP was, we're working with a local company who pulls the methane out of a landfill nearby. We take that methane, we inject it into our CNG. Now we have renewable natural gas on our buses. What people sometimes miss, Rafat, is it's good business. Mm-hmm. Our annual electricity costs went from 40 million to 20 million when we went to wind purchase. Renewable natural gas is $1 million less a year than CNG. The sustainable aviation fuel in that pilot, we think that will save money. So it gets lost a lot that, yes, we have a stewardship responsibility. We want to be innovative. We understand we have an accountability, but it's also good business. And
by the way, this the reason I guess it's wind is because what few people know is Texas is, I guess, one of the largest producers of wind energy in the country.
Yeah, good point. I mean, you think of Texas as oil and gas, obviously, and it is, but it is the #1 state in the U.S. in terms of generating wind.
There's obviously, continue on innovation as well as sustainability. You are doing a lot of improvements behind the scenes, and there's a quick video that Brian, I want you to play, and then we're going to talk about it a little bit as well.
All right, doing final check on the module. Looks like we're good.
Convoy is clear and ready to roll.
So that's some dramatic music right there. John, explain what's happening there. I think these are building, you're building, well, explain yourself.
Okay. We had a project where we needed to add 4 gates onto one of our existing concourses. And the infrastructure team and their partners did a great job. What we decided to do was prefabricate the construction of the gate rooms. And what we did is, again, we're fortunate we've got land on the airport. We prefabricated the construction of the gate rooms on airport, but it was landside, so we didn't have all the security issues. We didn't have to badge all the employees. So they built these modules. And then the fascinating part, and I hope people appreciated that during the video, is we literally then transported the modules across the airfield and then installed them at the concourse. And innovation can be across many business lines. And you know, again, a credit to our infrastructure team. They looked for innovative solutions. It reduced the time on the construction by 25%. and it also reduced the cost by 20%. And as we look at future terminal projects at DFW, that's where we're going to start is, can we prefabricate? Can we gain these efficiencies? Because the technology's out there, the innovation's out there, and we want to tap into it and keep delivering projects like this that save our airline partners money and also allow us to be very efficient.
One question that I have, and I know this is an audience question as well, what improvements, innovations, passenger experience, and airport ops, I guess we talked a little bit about today. Passenger experience, this has been a time where there's obviously extra checks coming in to airports for good reason, obviously through the pandemic. If anything, people are spending more time at airport now than they were prior to the pandemic, which was already a lot. Obviously helps you on the retail side as well. In terms of passenger experience, do you see improvements coming in? I know your biometric has come into DFW as well. Just quickly talk about some of the innovations that you're thinking through and the challenges within in some of those.
Sure. In terms of the customer experience, we have focused our technology and digital innovation around where are the pain points from a facilitation standpoint. TSA does a great job. They're a wonderful partner with us, but that is a facilitation point in the airport that can drive frustration if there's long lines. So we've installed technology at all of our checkpoints, and we have 15 of them, where it gives real-time line waits. And what it also does is it says if your line wait is 8 minutes, 100 yards down the hall, there's another checkpoint, and the line wait might be 4 minutes. It allows customers then to self-select.
And this is up in displays in the
right at the checkpoints. Plus, we have all that information real time on our website. So even if you're coming out to the airport, it gives you that information. Biometrics. We have invested in biometrics for years now, and so all of the international trips at DFW have biometric boarding. I went through it on my trip to London 10 days ago. It's faster, it's more secure, you board the airplane faster. And then on the arrival, to the credit of Customs and Border Patrol, because they really have been leading on biometrics, now your face, the biometric picture of your face now becomes your clearance mechanism as you return back into the US. So that's what we're focused on, Rafat, is where are some of the facilitation pain points? How can we use technology to improve that customer experience?
And I guess the controversy on biometrics, do you care? Facial recognition, there's some, I guess there was some news recently about, I forget what airport, maybe it was yours, maybe it was some other airline, maybe it was Delta, I think, using facial, and there was some controversy. What's your sense of that?
Well, two comments there. Number one, we do not hold the photo. We will never keep that data. That's not our responsibility. We don't want to get into that game. Number two, when you think of biometric boarding or you think of the biometric clearance as you come through customs, customers can opt out. If they don't want to do that, they can use the traditional clearance, traditional boarding. So customers have the opportunity to choose. What we're finding is well over 90% of the customers are very comfortable with biometrics.
This last question, because we have a couple of minutes left, used to be that American airports in general obviously were one of the first to be built when aviation came in, and were ignored for decades until it seems like there's now a realization that that airports as a gateway to the city, as a gateway to the region, as an emblem of progress of a region, certainly couldn't have gone any lower, but now seems to be moving up from there. What's your sense of airports in the US and their place in the local ecosystem?
Excellent question. And we've always viewed, since I've come to DFW, in many cases, we're the first touch point of people coming to Dallas or Fort Worth or the region. and we want people to have a great experience, a comfortable experience, feel a little bit of Texas warmth, a little DFW warmth. And that's a big part of our ethos, and especially the international arriving customer. You know, in many cases might be the first time they travel to the U.S. And so every step of the process, how do we work with all of our partners, our airlines, our federal partners, our concessionaires, to make it as welcoming and transformational as possible? And we're on that journey. I'm proud of what the team's accomplished. They've done a great job. We've got a great team, but we also know we got work to do as well.
All right. Thank you, Sean. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your partnership. And again, I think we'll say this every time. We hope to see you in person pretty soon.
We will see you next year in person. Thanks, Rafat.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.